All right, people, third to last episode of season 1, our second Saeed recap episode, The Greater Good. And Luke, we are getting closer and closer to the finale, and there is some fallout after Boone's death, to say the least, but it's not coming from the character that we thought it was going to be. The last episode ended, we thought Jack is on a mission of vengeance against Locke, and, well, things don't go exactly the way that we thought they were going to go this episode.
Well done. It's a great day for America. It's a great day for the world because we are yet another episode closer to the season finale, and this episode is it's yet another consistent episode after an absolute heater last time.
These episodes
good change of pace.
Yeah, these episodes are really, really heating up. All this on today's episode of Talkin' Lost. All right, The Greater Good, our second Saeed recap episode. So it's been a while since we've checked in with Saeed. I believe the last time that we did was episode 8, Solitary, the episode with where he first meets Russo, which, oh my God, it feels like it's been forever since we watched that episode. But yeah, so this episode, like I said, there's some hell to pay to after the fallout from Boone's death. You know, Shannon is grieving, Jack is being like, Locke lied. As a result of his lie, I misdiagnosed Boone's medical treatment and he died as a result. So there's still a little bit of that whole, hero complex. Like, I could have done better. I could have saved him. Everyone's being like, Jack, you got to calm down. You got to relax. You're going to pass out. You literally were just giving Boone your blood. Like, this is not going to work out well for you. So they're trying to get him to rest. Meanwhile, Saeed is having a little bit of a crisis of conscience right now because he is kind of being placed by both Shannon and himself into a similar position that he has found himself in before, in that he is kind of being forced to be, for lack of a better word, the guy that gets things done, even though he doesn't necessarily want to. And this ties very well into his flashback and also into his character arc going forward, because the thing about Saeed, and this kind of ties into a lot of the focus characters that we're going to spend time with throughout the rest of the show, and why this is, this doesn't seem like it, but why this is such an important episode, is that Saeed is constantly the one that people are going to, where it's like, look, we know you don't want to do this, but you're the only one of us that we know can get this done, And it's not going to be nice, it's not going to be pretty, but due to his background as a member of the Iraqi Republican Guard, as an interrogator, as a torturer. We saw this when they were trying to get the information out of Sawyer that they needed to early on in the show. Like I said, all of these seeds are coming back full circle. And yeah, it is it's interesting to say the least, especially once we get into his backstory in this episode. Like I said, Saeed, it's another one like Jack, where again we're getting bits and pieces. Obviously, we get the piece in this episode that shows how he was on the plane. What's it called? I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, it's this and then Kate, and that'll be the last final piece as far as explaining why they were on the plane. Although I don't think they actually explain how Charlie, or what Charlie was doing in Australia. I don't think we get that for a little bit. But what did you think of Saeed's backstory in this episode?
Yeah, I sort of skimmed through it again right before this episode, and I think what I got from that part of the backstory was that, along with him when he was torturing Sawyer in the episode, it seems like a lifetime ago, when we discussed that he's willing to cross some moral lines to get what he more wants. Like, he wants to reunite with his not girlfriend but friend, whatever. So he,
the love of his life, if you will.
Yeah. So he essentially gives up his friend to the CIA.
Yeah,
I think it was.
Yeah, the CIA. It's a joint mission between. The backstory in this episode is essentially where Saeed is recruited in a joint op by the CIA and the ASIS, the Australian secret international service, in order to try and foil a terrorist plot that he discovers that a friend of his from college is seemingly going to be involved in. And
that's why he's in Sydney.
Yes, exactly. That is why he is in Sydney. He's there. He infiltrates the cell. He reconnects with his friend, who unfortunately is revealed the motivation there is his friend lost his wife in a stray bomb during the Iraq War. What's it called? They what's it called? He infiltrates them, and at the very last minute, he discovers that the CIA wants his friend to detonate the bomb so that they can have some evidence on him. Their motivation, of course, is that they're going to tell him where Nadia is, who he, of course, hasn't seen since he let her go.
They kind of blackmail him a little bit.
Oh, 100%. It's
Yeah.
typical standard fare for the CIA and the intelligence services. And yeah, he at the last minute, he attempts to convince his friend to get out and did not do it. He reveals his intentions to the CIA. His friend ends up killing himself, and he is allowed to be let go, and he ends up, what's it called? And of course, he ends up on the plane.
But
the
he
next day.
insists that he goes a day later
Absolutely, yes.
so that he can claim the body of his friend, and then thus
Exactly.
he ends up on the flight. But yeah, I think that moral crossing lines will lead into his future character in future seasons, like you alluded to.
Yes, exactly. We were talking about this before, and I was saying how basically it ties into Saeed's role on the island, which, if for all the lost heads as well, they know that once we get into the later seasons of the show, we deal with the idea of candidates, and we discover that there's a that even though it seems like random and happenstance, there was a very specific reason why this group of people ended up on the island, and why a specific group of survivors, if you will, I'm sure you can figure out who, end up being the last couple alive. Because they are candidates, potentially. And the thing about Saeed is Saeed and Sawyer are two people where the thing about being a candidate is that you got to have a certain level of grit. You got to have a certain level of being able to get things done that other people might not want to, you know? And the thing about two characters, Saeed and Sawyer, is that those two, I feel like, are constantly going back and forth as far as whether they're going to be serious threats or whether they're going to be protectors, right? And the thing is that obviously you think it's going to be one way at the beginning, and then as time goes on, Sawyer ends up kind of being like the rogue with the heart of gold, versus Saeed ends up kind of being a little bit of the Anakin Skywalker, where he's the one that's kind of consistently tempted towards evil. Because even though he consistently, he's one of those characters that even though he consistently strives to do the right thing, he is constantly screwed over by forces higher than him, to the point where he soon ends up being like, fuck this, why am I doing all this righteous good stuff? You know, all it does is get me screwed over, you know? And so that's kind of going to be Saeed's arc as time goes on. And that ties into his journey on the island, where basically Locke kind of comes up at Boone's funeral, admits what happened. He's like, yeah, it was my fault. Boone,
Yeah, my bad, guys.
Yeah, it's like, my bad, guys. Boone discovered this plane.
Just covered in blood. Like,
yeah, like just completely casual. I'm like, wow, this man's got a lot of balls. Like, a lot of balls right here, where he just immediately climbs up, where he just immediately shows up. Is like, yeah, Boone climbed up into this plane. I couldn't. I had a problem with my leg. It ended up crushing him. You know, he's apologizing. He's remorseful. Of course, no one's buying it. Jack immediately goes apeshit, starts beating him up. He tries to talk to Shannon. Shannon's not buying it. She's like, and of course she talks to Saeed, and he's like, look, you said that you would do anything for me, right? And he's like, yes. And she's like, what? Well, John Locke, I don't believe that he had nothing to do with my brother's death. What are you gonna do about it? And it's kind of like, oh man. It's like I was hoping
big revenge boner on
yeah,
Shannon.
It's like I was hoping I wasn't gonna have to do this again, man. Like, good lord. But of course, Saeed ends up, you know, doing his little interrogation game with Locke. He's like, oh, it's interesting, you know, Boone mentioned a hatch before he died. You know, and he's constantly doing this back and forth. And Locke knows he's being interrogated. It's a very interesting game of cat and mouse, where Locke is probably the only one that can match Saeed intelligence. It's a very interesting dynamic. You know, we talked a lot, obviously, about Locke and Jack, but Saeed and Locke is a very underrated pairing as well.
Yeah.
Because
you can't bullshit a bullshitter.
Exactly.
Situation there, especially when Locke's like, hatch, you know, plane hatch.
Plane hatch.
What's a plane hatch?
No, he's like, there's one main, one rear. You know, I'm assuming that's what Boone was talking about. You know, little jokey jokes right there. And the thing too that I think is really funny is how even Locke really doesn't have any experience to really back this up. Ultimately, again, he's just a dude who liked watching birds and got a kidney taken out and was planning on going on a walkabout and such. So it is kind of
building, apparently, which we'll find out later.
Exactly. We'll find that out later. So it is fascinating how Locke kind of has this very, again, all this kind of worldwide experience and just enough common sense to be able to combat Saeed, a literal trained torturer, you know, and soldier, where, what's it called, where he's able to like match him beat for beat when it comes to interrogation. You've also got a little micro sub arc with the raft and where that's continuing, where Walt is. You can tell Walt's also not sure whether or not Locke was telling the truth about having nothing to do with Boone. They're getting closer and closer to finishing the raft, and also Charlie's trying to make baby Aaron fall asleep. Nothing's working.
Baby Turnip for now.
Yeah, baby Turnip Head, exactly. Hurley busts out a spellbinding performance of "I Feel Good," does not work, and then they realize that the key to making Aaron go to sleep, Sawyer's voice. Sawyer's just got that comforting Southern drawl that just makes the baby just fall asleep, which is hilarious to say the least.
Yeah, these lost B plots that they kind of fill in the rest of the episode are just gold. There's filler that you don't really enjoy, but just like a simple thing like, oh, we have to calm that baby down, and somehow it's Sawyer reading a car magazine that calms him down.
It's hysterical. It's absolutely,
and it just gets
great.
The characters involved. Just like reminder that they're still here, they're still on. I love the trope of when people are like in a stranded group or something, and someone has a baby, like everyone becomes a parent, kind of. So yeah, that's great. Just
it's pretty great.
I just need more Sawyer in the main light.
Yes, exactly. Well, the good thing about Exodus that's cool is the thing that I like about the finales is the finales usually do like kind of sort of what the pilot did before you were getting to know everyone, where the finales kind of, now that you've spent all this time getting to know all these characters, they kind of tie and mix and match them together, both
and they've only been there for a month
their backstory.
Because
yeah, it hasn't been that long, too. That's the other thing that's pretty cool is that even though, again, there's a lot of episodes, the story pretty much takes place in real time. So, like, again, it's only been, like they tell you on the Wikipedia how many days it's been, but as far as how long they've been on the island. But it is pretty impressive there. So, of course, naturally, Sayid comes back and is like, yeah, I don't think Locke had anything to do with Boone's death. He's like, there's definitely a couple things that he's not telling us, but as far as Boone's death goes, yeah, he was telling the truth. Shannon doesn't believe him. Kate literally has to drug Jack in order to get him to actually sleep. Then he finally wakes up. They discover the gun case is missing. Shannon's holding Locke at gunpoint in the woods. They manage to find her. They stop her at the last minute. Sayid is like, listen, killing him is not going to make you feel better and all that. And then, of course, at the end, it's like, look, the only reason why I didn't have her shoot you was because you're probably our best chance of survival. Now you're going to take me to the hatch. He's like, Hatch, I already told you. He's like, Locke. He's like, I sniffed through that bullshit before. It's not going to work on me this time. Take me to the goddamn hatch. So now we're finally getting set up for the two plots that are leading us into the end game. Again, the raft, which is finally getting ready to leave the island, and finally the rest of the survivors are learning about the hatch. And that's what's going to take us into both the penultimate episode next week, the Born to Run, our last Kate recap of the episode. Hopefully there'll be some payoff as far as those two boring, pointless episodes up until this point. And then the 3-part finale, Exodus, which we're going to be taking a whole podcast episode to cover, because those are 3 standard length Lost episodes that we're going to have to watch, and we're recapping all of them. So it's going to be a lot. So you guys are definitely going to want to stay tuned for that. So good episode.
I will say that I thought Shannon might have shot Locke there, and like the island's gonna do like a resurrection, and your job isn't done. We need you to keep going. But no, he just got grazed.
Exactly,
so.
He just got grazed. Tis a flesh wound. But yes, no, one would be remiss for thinking that as well. So good episode. Again, like it's another one where, again, the backstory, it ties into the episode, into the island plot just well enough. I'd still say it's not as good as Sawyer's or Locke's or Jack's, but Sayid's backstory is pretty up there as well. Like I said,
they can't all be.
Yeah, exactly. So far, like I said, the best, again, there's a reason why certain characters have the best backstories and plot lines. The best ones so far this season have been Locke, Sawyer, Sayid, Jin and Sun, Jack. Yeah, those 5 so far have been the best. And Hurley, yes, you're right. Yeah. Hurley. I keep forgetting. You know why? Because he only got one this season.
It's a pretty big one. But.
Yeah, but it was very crucial and important. You're right. It's those 6 or 7, rather. And then Kate kind of gets thrown in. Oh, and Claire. Claire, too. Claire's was awesome, too. As far as just kind of setting her up for, like, some mysterious potential. Because Claire's was probably, like, the one that was, like, the most telling as far as, like, the role that she's going to have in the island going forward, as far as like bringing her to the island, the most supernatural causes. So
And
I
her
said,
like just the the psychic knowing
right,
things was also the most like that, and the Hurley getting the numbers. Like
right.
I think those two are up there as the most telling and supernatural type for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So that was it. That was our recap. Like I said, it was a short, sweet one, but like I said, another solid one as we get closer and closer to this finale. Oh man, it's gonna be really awesome once we hit that.
I think I'm
That's
gonna
gonna be
space them
electric.
out. I'm gonna watch them 3 days in
Smart,
sequence.
very smart, because it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot that we got to cover there for sure. So, like I said, we got one more Kate backstory to suffer through. I mean, watch next week, and then we will be finished with season 1. Look at that. So, with that being said, Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Look Reviews on YouTube. As of today, I've handed in my last assignment of the past semester, so I'm gonna watch one or two 2024 movies today, see if they can make the top 10, and then tomorrow I should start working on that.
Hell yeah, hell yeah! I'm really looking forward to that list.
I'm
I'm
hoping
very
by the
excited to
end
see it.
of optimistic Sunday, realistic next week.
Yeah. Yeah, always better to hedge on the realistic side when it comes to these things. And of course, you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. I just did the top 10 movies of 2024 myself last night, so you guys can check that out. It was a very, very long episode, but well worth it. And as
I
always,
woke up and you guys were like,
yeah,
barely
we were
starting.
doing it. Yeah, it was quite late that we went. I think we were up until 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as always, we'll see you guys next week for the next episode. Get lost.